Hey guys, Mr. King here. Today we're going to talk about drawings, tables, and graphs. Anytime you do a scientific experiment, you're going to have data of some sort that you're going to need to put in a display for other people to read. You can use drawings, tables, and graphs to help communicate that data to other people. It makes it a lot more interesting than just looking at a bunch of numbers on a piece of paper. It makes it more visually pleasing. So we're going to talk about how you use those things and when you use certain ones. First thing you can do is you can make a drawing. Drawings can emphasize only necessary details or show things you can't see. So you can make a drawing of something that's really huge, you can shrink it down, or something that's very small, you can make it larger on a piece of paper and show those details. You can take a picture of something. You take a picture of an experiment, and the photograph would show an object exactly as it is at a single moment. So if you were doing an experiment that lasted over a certain period of time, you could take a picture in 1 minute intervals. So every 1 minute you snap a photo, and you could show how that experiment is going or how a reaction is taking place. Here is a drawing of the Earth. You can see it breaks down the different parts of the Earth. Obviously, we cannot step away from the Earth and see the different parts like that. It's much too large. So this drawing can help you see the inner core and the outer core and the mantle and give you an idea of the size of it and how that's all broken down. So this is the case of taking a huge object and drawing it much smaller so you can visualize what it actually looks like. So when you get data from an experiment, one place you can put it is in a table. Okay, a table displays information in rows and columns for easier comprehension. You guys have done that with the coats in the lab experiment where you had to record the different temperatures of different coats depending on the material they were made out of or the color they were. But if you want to make it something that people can look at visually besides just numbers, then we're going to be talking about graphs. Okay, graphs collect, organize, and summarize data visually. So it makes it colorful, it makes it a nice display to look at, and a lot of people enjoy reading graphs as opposed to looking at tables. If you look at a table, you're just seeing rows and columns of numbers. If you look at a graph, you're either seeing a bar graph, a circle graph, or a line graph, which has different drawings on it in different colors and things like that. So we're going to talk about the types of graphs that you can use. Here's a little bit about what a graph is.
I'm Ted Deuce with more math news you can use. Ted, watch this. As cars drive by, I stack up a block. If the car is blue, I stack up a blue block. If a red car goes by, you stack a red block. Right. You can easily see that more blue cars went by than red. And almost no green cars went by, and even less yellow cars. That's a great way to record information. What do you call it? It's a graph. No, it's
It's a graph. Graphs are used to show and explain data.
What's data?
Data is a group of numbers. In this case, the numbers show how many cars drove by of each color.
I think we should call it the amazing Barkley block counter thingy. It's a graph. Until next time, I'm Ted Deuce.
So as silly as that video is, it does show what a graph is and how it's used, and it's better to look at than just a bunch of numbers written on a piece of paper. So we've got three types of graphs. Our first one is a line graph, and a line graph shows the relationship between two variables which must be numbers. So you have your two different axes on a graph, and you can see we have numbers going along both. We have speed, and then we also have time, and those are both represented in numbers. Speed is along top, time is along the bottom. So when you use a graph that is numbers versus numbers, you're going to want to make that a line graph. Okay, so those are two variables, and we call them variables because they're numbers, and those numbers can change. That's when you use a line graph. Now, if you want to use a bar graph uses bars of different sizes to show relationships between variables. One variable is divided into parts, the other variable is divided into number. So the thing that you just saw with the guy counting the cars going by, that was a bar graph. He had one axis, had the number of cars, that would be the number, and then the other was the color of the car. That was divided into parts. So that would be a bar graph that you could use. Here's another bar graph. you can see there's numbers where it says number of students. That's going up along the axis. And then also month is going along the other axis. And you can see the month would be the category. And then the number of students who were born in the month, that's your variable, that's your number. So once again, if we go back, the line graph has two sets of numbers, okay, numbers on both axes. If you look at the bar graph, you have numbers only on one axis, and then you have a category on the other. Now the third type is a circle graph. Circle graph shows parts of a whole as percentages. So if you want to talk about like where you spent your birthday money, or how many people out of the school like the Lions, that's showing parts of a whole as percentages. And here is a circle graph for you to look at. You guys know them as pie charts as well. This is someone's family budget. So this is out of all their money that they make, this is where their money goes. So you can see each little slice of the circle is represented by a percentage of money that they're spending in each category. Okay, so anytime you're talking about you want to show how all of something is, if you want to show how the whole school thinks about something, or if you want to show how you spent your whole allowance on something, that would be a great time to use a circle graph. Now, scales on a graph. Scales on a graph must be constructed carefully and analyzed so users can easily understand the information. Okay, what the scale is when we're talking about how many spaces you have between things. For example, if we did birthdays of students by month, let's pretend this scale on the side where it says number of students went by tens. So it went 0, 10, 20, 30, 40. Almost all these months would look exactly alike because they're less than 10. It would be hard to tell exactly how far underneath 10 they are. So since you don't have a ton of students, you end up going by ones. If we go back to our line graph, the speed, and this looks like we're going in speed in meters per second. Okay, this is talking about how fast an object is traveling. You can see after it traveled for 5 seconds, it was going 30 meters per second. Now, if we had this chart scale going, instead of speed going by tens, let's say it was going by ones, you would have a ton of information on there that would be really hard to see because there would be so many different numbers. It would say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to the number 40. Then that's not necessary. You can look at the graph and you can figure out approximately how fast it's going. You can see that each one of those lines represents 2 meters per second. There's 5 different lines in between the 10 and the 20. And so you can figure that out. So you got to be careful with what you put as your scale. You don't want to make it so your graph is super tiny, and you don't want to make it so your graph is super huge either. So you got to kind of balance that out. So anytime you make those, you need to make sure that you're thinking about, okay, how much total information am I going to put on the graph? It's not a good idea to start drawing your graph and then figure out, okay, what am I going to put on here? You want to think about, okay, what's the biggest number, what's the smallest number, and how much space do I need in between there? All right, guys, so that was kind of a quick one, but this is a pretty easy thing. So just to recap a little bit, if you're going to do numbers versus numbers, you're going to want to use a line graph. If you're going to do numbers and categories, you're going to want to use a bar graph. And if you're talking about parts of a whole, that's where you're going to want to use a circle graph. All right, complete that WSQ. Make sure you do your quiz on the back. Remember, a good challenge question always has more than one answer. It's something you can talk about and people can have a different opinion about or a different theory about why they think about that. So make sure you write a great challenge question. I will see you all tomorrow.